Welcome to Sacred Stories Podcast, a place to explore and discuss new and exciting books of consciousness. I am your host, Reverend Patricia Caginello, and speaking with authors that have shared their wisdom and stories through their books is one of my favorite things to do. Today we are speaking with Peggy Linsey, a contributing author to our new book, Chaos to Clarity, Sacred Stories of Transformational Change. Peggy is the author of This New Cottage, a tale of color, nostalgia, and the challenges of rebuilding a Cape Cod cottage. The coffee table book features her personal story and photographs of the cottage rebuild. You can find out more at thisnewcottage.com. So, welcome Peggy Linsey to Sacred Stories.
Thank you so much, Patricia.
I'm excited for you to be here. As I shared with you just a few minutes ago, the story that you wrote, which is called Downsizing, a life-changing roller coaster ride, I believe is so relevant to so many people today. Just this morning, I was having a conversation with a girlfriend, and she brought up about having so much stuff, all this stuff that she needed to minimize or clear from her house. So, and I thought of you. I said, well, I'm having an interview today about just that topic.
Well, that's awesome. I wish her well. I am someone who successfully downsized.
I love how you say that because it really isn't. It's an accomplishment.
Oh, I feel it was an accomplishment. Luckily, my husband and I had a few years to plan our move, which included downsizing. It took that long.
Well, tell us a little bit more. Tell us your sacred story that you shared in our book, Chaos to Clarity.
Well, sure. As you said, the article is entitled Downsizing, a life-changing roller coaster ride. In the story, I described the downsizing monster. It is an emotional roller coaster to go through 20 years or more of your stuff. And downsizing really is just about stuff. After I experienced all the emotions of the roller coaster ride, I ended up feeling cleansed and liberated from so much stuff.
Now, I'm happy that you brought up there's an emotional roller coaster ride, because I think many people look at it as this thing that they have to do, and it's a very physical thing, right? You're cleaning out closets and attics and packing stuff up and donating it and so forth. But your story is written so beautifully in sharing the emotions, and you refer to it as a downsizing monster. Talk a little bit more about the downsizing process and the stuff that you eventually got rid of.
Sure. It is a monster. It's an emotional monster, because you have to basically touch and decide about every single thing you own if you want to do it well. Sure, some people could just take a carton that's been sealed for years and toss it. I was not that type of person. I needed to look and see what was in there. I came across my children's clothes, my children's Halloween costumes, recital costumes. Well, I kept every playbill from theater that I had ever gone to. My husband had a record album collection. And that's really just skimming the surface of the types of things that we found. Downsizing for us was true downsizing. We were going to a smaller house, and that meant ridding ourselves of a lot of our furniture.
So it's interesting because it is downsizing in a lot of different ways, right? So you did go to a smaller house. I've downsized also post-divorce. I went from the 4-bedroom colonial to a 3-bedroom apartment, but it's much smaller, of course, than the house. And so I do understand getting rid of the furniture and the treasured items. And what I found when we were doing it is many of the things that had to do with our children, of course, I could get lost for hours in going through it, and it would take me down, memory lane in so many different ways. So talk a little bit about that, and were you able to, or how did you decide, tips for other people as they go through it in deciding what to keep, what to donate, especially as you're touching those emotional memories of your past.
Right. It is emotional to dig into the past. For myself, I found that taking pictures of things helped preserve the memories for me. Scanning things also worked. I had come across my father's military papers, and scanning those and sharing them with my siblings was therapeutic in a way. The emotions, all in the same day, you could feel accomplished and overwhelmed. You could feel like crying and you could feel like laughing. It's a very turbulent ride, as I say.
I love the idea of scanning and taking pictures of things. I don't think I didn't think of that. That's a really wonderful tip to share with others as they're going through this process. So even though maybe that physical box of papers or pictures or so forth is something that ultimately is going to get packed up and donated or disposed of in some way, you can still retain much of the memories by doing that.
Exactly. And then they're available to share as well, like I say, with my siblings or our children, whatever the case might be.
One of the parts of your story, Peggy, that really kind of touched me, and I think it will touch the readers as well, was when you wrote about when the piano, where your children would play the piano and have their recitals and so forth, was being carried out of the house because there was just absolutely no room for a piano in your smaller place. Talk about that a little bit. What were your emotions when something that of significance to your children's childhood actually was leaving?
Well, the importance of the piano was a case where I didn't expect the emotion that I felt when the piano was being moved out of the house. I had been thrilled to find a buyer for it because it can be difficult to dispose of a piano if they're hard to move. But I didn't expect the overwhelming sadness as they got moved out of the house. I still can get a chill thinking about it. That's why I know it's significant. Our children had learned to play the piano. They practiced for their recitals. It filled the house with music. It was an important part of their upbringing in our lives at the time. And the reality of it actually going out the door made me realize that indeed we were moving to a smaller house and there was not room for it. I keep the memory tucked close in my heart. We still have all her music. If she ever has a piano of her own, particularly my daughter played, if she ever has a piano of her own, she can go back to all her music. So that was a little consolation to me. But that was a major event. I was home alone. My husband wasn't there the day it got moved out. It also left the room feeling very empty. And that's when reality started to set in.
That's when the downsizing monster, as you dubbed him, right? That emotional monster would rear its ugly head in moments like that.
Exactly. Sometimes the monster kind of laid low, but the monster knew exactly when to pull on my heart, and that something was very important.
You really do write your story in such a beautiful way. I know that everyone will be able to relate to it. and it is a significant change, right? I mean, downsizing and disposing of our stuff, right, as you label it, that's a big change in our lives, and it's a big emotional shift. How are you different, or how did you grow from that experience of downsizing?
Well, Patricia, what has amazed me is we have never looked back. I can drive by that house and feel happy. There's new people enjoying it. My heart is not tugged anymore. We moved to a new, beautiful, smaller home. We became snowbirds. Our life has become so rich since leaving the big house. I can't have imagined not doing it.
So is it really just stuff, Peggy? Is that what you would leave our audience with, that it really is stuff?
It really is stuff, and I'm not to say I don't have stuff in my new house, but it certainly is minimal. I am much more critical about what I buy, and I continue to clean things out. And a few years later, what I find is my life is much richer with new relationships, and that I am much happier spending my time and money with people rather than trying to accumulate things.
So what would you, in addition to that, which is a really wise statement, is there anything else from your story? You were compelled to share your story. Is there anything else you would like the readers to take? Mm-hmm.
I would encourage anyone considering that they need to downsize for whatever reason, health or finances or happiness, to just start. All it takes is one step at a time.
It's so funny because I literally said almost the exact same thing to my friend this morning, that brought up this conversation. I was like, start with one thing, right? Because she's feeling the just overwhelmed with what she considers the magnitude of the job.
And you certainly do feel that way a lot. I found that even in a closet, if I just cleaned one shelf, I let myself celebrate the accomplishment of that tiny task. Eventually, one shelf at a time becomes the whole closet. Chip away at it.
Yeah, that's really great advice. That's great advice. Actually, it's kind of life advice. Wouldn't you say, Peggy? I mean, isn't that interesting? It's kind of the microcosm of the macrocosm, right? You're talking about cleaning out your house, going through the one drawer at a time. But it's really an analogy for our larger lives, right? As far as one step in front of the other.
Is.
Yeah.
It certainly is. I can't encourage anyone listening or reading the book to start. Even if the person isn't going to move, it's therapeutic to declutter.
I agree.
We all tend to fill our space. If there's a place to put something, we keep it. In our new house, I have some drawers and kitchen cabinets that aren't full.
That must just be a really great feeling, though. You must feel spacious.
I have all I need. And more.
Right.
It's a good feeling to have, space around you. There's the concept of feng shui, where you need to allow the positive energies to move around you and through your house. And I've come to believe that.
Oh, I believe it as well. Peggy Linsey, your story is titled Downsizing. the life-changing roller coaster ride. And as you know, it's a beautiful story. And as we've seen in even just this interview, that it is an analogy really for our greater life. And I'm so excited for everyone to read it. Share again your website so others know how to get in touch with you and find out more about your book, This New Cottage.
Sure. As you mentioned, my book is This New Cottage. The website is www.thisnewcottage.com. That's all one word, This New Cottage. And all the social media links are there. In addition, if someone leaves their email in the appropriate space, they will receive a free ebook on how to add cottage charm to your home.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. The Cape Cod cottages, they're charming. I mean, they're just, every one of them is just so charming as it is. So I'm sure it's a very beautiful book. And the ebook, and I imagine, is very well received. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Patricia.
So our audience, our guest has been Peggy Linsey. Her book is called This New Cottage, and Peggy shared her story, Downsizing, a life-changing roller coaster ride, in our new book, Chaos to Clarity, Sacred Stories of Transformational Change, which is available through Amazon and booksellers worldwide and direct through Sacred Stories Publishing. So thank you for listening today. I am your host, Reverend Patricia Caginello, and until next time, as always, I encourage you to write your sacred story well.